Hi and welcome back to Mrs. Riley's Maths videos. I'm looking at grouped frequency tables. This is the second video about grouped frequency tables, and in this one I'm looking at calculating the mean using the mid-interval values. Okay, so we'll talk about what that means in a second. Here's our data. What we had, if you remember from the last video, is we had the amount of money people spent in a shop on chocolate, so 10 to 20 cent, 20 to 30 cent, 30 to 40 cent, and we had put them into groups. So all the people that spent between 10 and 20 cent we put in there. So there are 3 of those people. 5 people spent 20 to 30 cent, 3 people spent 30 to 40 cent, 2 people spent between 40 and 50 cent, 4 people, and so on. And what we're looking at here is how to find the mean of this data. Now the mean, to translate this is the formula. This means the sum of, so the sum of the frequency times the amount the person spent by the sum of the frequency. So in other words, how many people. So in total, the total people, in this case there were 30 people. If we add all those up we get 30. And we've got to work out how do we find out what was the mean amount they spent. The difficulty we run into is because the people in this group spent between 10 and 20 cent. We don't know whether they spent 11, whether they spent 15. We could go back to the original data, but actually we're going to find another way to do this. And how we're going to do it is that we're going to take a number to represent this group. So the people that spent, let's take 10 to 20 cent and 20 to 30 cent as our examples. The people that spent between 10 and 20 cent, we want to find a value that represents that. And we decide that we're going to take the value that's halfway along that, because that would be a good representation. You know, on average they spent 15 cent. So on average they spent 10 plus 20 over 2, which is 15 cent. That's a good value. Okay, that kind of represents that group very well. In this group we're going to say on average they spent the halfway amount of those, which would be 25 cent. So basically we're taking what's called the mid-interval value, which is the halfway value of each group, halfway value of each group, and we're going to let that be the representative value. So in other words, the value that represents the group best. So when we come and calculate the mean, what we say is, instead of saying 10 to 20 as our value, what we say is, I was going to use it with red pen, let's see if it shows up, 15 cent. So money spent is 15. In this one it's 20, halfway between 20 and 30, which is 25 cent, halfway between 30 and 40, which is 35 cent, halfway between 40 and 50 is 45, 55 is halfway between 50 and 60, 65 is halfway between 60 and 70, 75 is halfway between 70 and 80, 85 is halfway between 80 and 90, and 95 is halfway between 90 and 100. And if I didn't see it, like if I couldn't see that 95 was halfway between 90 and 100, what I would do is I would add those two together and divide by 2, and I would find that the mid-interval value was 95. Okay, so if you're not sure what the mid-interval value is, you add the two numbers at either end of the group together and divide by 2. Now, how do I use those values? Well, what I do then to calculate my mean is I say 3 people spent 15 cent. I use the mid-interval value, okay, for each group. So 5 people here spent 25 cent, and then 3 people spent 35 cent, and 2 people spent 45 cent, and 4 people spent 55 cent, and 4 people spent 65 cent, and 3 people spent 75 cent, 3 people spent 85 cent, and finally 3 people spent 95 cent. Now I'm still going to divide all the way across by 30 people, because there were 30 people in total. Okay, so I'm still going to divide by 30, and so what I'm just going to do is do that on my calculator. Now be careful doing it on your calculator, because you're going to have to make sure that the calculator knows what you're doing. So actually what I might do, yeah, well anyway, we'll see. Just do it on your calculator carefully. So we've got 45, maybe I'll just do it this way, 45, I know that'll take too long. Let's use brackets. So 3 times 25, sorry, 3 times 15 plus bracket 5 times 25, close brackets, plus bracket 3 times 35, close brackets, plus bracket 2 times 45, plus, and keep going here, 4 times 55, 55. I know you can't see that very well, sorry, but it's just to get through it. So you can, oh yeah, you can see that coming up there. 4 times 55 plus bracket 4 times 65 plus bracket 3 times 75 plus bracket 3 times 80. Very tedious, isn't it? Plus bracket 3 times 95. So just check that back through. 395, 3 times 85, 3 times 75, 4 times 65, 4 times 55, 2 times 45, 3 times 35, 5 times 25, and 3 times 15. Okay, all added up gives me 1,610 divided by 30, because there were 30 people altogether, and that gives me an average amount spent on chocolate bars of 53.6 recurring, or 53.6 cent, or 6-7 cent on chocolate. Okay, is the mean amount. Okay, I hope that helps. Thanks, bye bye.